Gonzalez, where we get to the bottom line of politics and what's really happening in Miami-Dade County. November 3rd, 2020 was a sad day in Miami-Dade County. The election results came in and the losses for the Democratic Party were devastating. Congresswoman Donna Shalala lost to Maria Elvira Salazar. State Senator Jose Javier Rodriguez lost to Donald Trump fan Ileana Garcia. And Representative Javier Fernandez, he was running for state senate. He lost to Ana Maria Rodriguez. Sadly, Republican Tom Fabricio, a political newbie, he beat incumbent Representative Cindy Polo. Statewide, Democrats got defeated, and Republicans blocked Democrats from making any gains despite the tens of millions of dollars spent by the Democratic Party. Overall, this past election cycle, Republicans gained 7 seats and the Democratic Party lost 4 seats. Today, we have with us Cindy Polo. Her losing this election really hurt because this is a young woman who was really on her way to becoming a powerful voice in the state of Florida. She's the youngest of 3 children of Colombian immigrants. Her father, Ramon, was a unionized foreman for Entenmann's. I love Entenmann's. And her mother, Carmen, is a seamstress. Cindy worked hard. She graduated from Hialeah Miami Lakes Senior High, Bachelor in Science Communication from FIU, an MBA from FIU, a true immigrant success story. She then worked in communications at the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority and the Miami Heat. She's a single mom. She speaks fluent Spanish, and her communications skills in English are probably better than mine. In November 28, I celebrated her unlikely win because it was not supposed to happen. Cindy Polo is really representative of the people. This past election cycle, the Sun Sentinel that endorsed her in District 113 in Florida House, representing Hialeah, that area, said, "Don't silence this voice. Keep Representative Cindy Polo in Florida House District 103. I'm so excited to have Cindy here with me today to talk about the cycle and her upcoming plans. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Did I get it right? Your dad works for Entenmann's? That's probably the coolest job ever.
Yeah, it was a challenge to try to stay in shape. When I went away to school, I started at FSU, and he would send me care packages, and it came like in an Entenmann's box. The entire floor of my dorm would show up at my room because it was just boxes and boxes of treats. But it was a great job for him. He was there for over 25 years, I believe.
Oh my gosh, we love Entenmann's and we love you. And Tommy, would you help me watch part of this? I want everybody to see this, and I'm not good at doing this myself, so I have to hand off my cell phone. So what happened? I remember when I first met you, it was at a Denny's. I don't know.
At a Denny's in Miami Springs. Yeah.
Yep, 2018. It was a progressive caucus meeting. You spoke, and you just blew it away. It was so wonderful. You're such a powerful speaker. And I was shocked when you won because I didn't think that Hialeah would elect a Democrat. So tell us, what was that like, first and foremost, in 2018, winning that race?
Well, along with you, I also didn't think we were going to win. Be careful what you wish for. Well, so part of getting into the fight, and I think I said it that day at Denny's, it was, probably a ton of people don't believe in me and my team because it was my name on the ballot, but it was this group of scrappy individuals that decided to take on, at that time, the speaker's best friend. And so we did it because we were trying to build on the success that Yvette Gonzalez-Pekovich had in 2016. She had just come short of beating Manny Diaz Jr. And we had identified areas along with her. She was amazing. She didn't just go out and hide. She tried to pay it forward. And she told us where she felt her campaign had failed. And growing up in this area and living here our entire lives, we didn't need consultants or maps. We knew our area. We weren't going to send folks to a gated community without being prepared. So things like that, we decided in 2018, specifically right after Parkland, I thought, all right, so I guess I'll be the crazy one after a bit of an intervention of my friend saying, hey, so that person we've been waiting to run is going to be you. And we just said, let's take it to them. Let's build on this so that whomever comes up in 2020 will have a better chance, right? So the idea was to lay a foundation. And we worked really, really hard, and we knocked on doors that had never been knocked on before. As you mentioned, I'm a proud girl from Hialeah, and our party, for the most part, for many years, had ignored our community. And so that's what we did. And we worked really, really hard, and we were able to flip the seat by 7 points. And I paid for it. They made sure that I knew from day one that I was going to be treated as an outsider, that this was going to be a seat that they were going to contest every step of the way. And they did. It was nonstop from the moment I got into office.
And how were the local elected officials in the cities that you represent? How did they treat you when you got elected? Because it was an upset. It's always been a Republican seat. You caused a tumult, and were they nice? Were they dismissive?
I guess I would have more opinions about them had they met with me. From the
they never met with you?
No, so from the very get-go, and actually I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago, one of those Facebook memories came up where I had to take to Facebook 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, if you do the math, I had been in office for about 67 days. And I essentially had to call out the town of Miami Lakes. They had gone up to Tallahassee during committee week to meet with all of their cities and the representatives that belong to those certain areas. And they took pictures right across the hallway in the 14th floor and posted those pictures with a representative that represents no section of Miami Lakes, and canceled on me 30 minutes before. And so we sent out a series of emails, made several phone calls, my staffers mostly, and they just would not meet with me. They had a lot to say about me at town meetings, but they would not meet with me. And
so there was no way to flip them.
So eventually by day 100, you just kind of say, you know what, we got to keep working. And I can be petty, but there's people's lives that were on the line. And so you just, in my opinion, you just kind of have to keep working. But they were going to make sure that I was not going to be able to succeed. Because as you know, House elections are every 2 years. And so you win an election, and by the next day, you're basically starting a re-election campaign. And so there's so many fires to put out. We have such horrible, horrible legislation in Tallahassee that, it was a matter of sort of drowning out the noise. And all right, so I'm not going to be cutting the ribbon at the Easter egg hunt, but I'm certainly going to still advocate for the town.
Well, I mean, you really are an outspoken voice. I think one of the loudest voices in the legislature. When I would start to read your tweets, I followed you. I was following you on Facebook, and I was cheering for you. And, and Anna Escamani, and I thought, wow, they have these really well-spoken young women who are bilingual, and that is very frightening for this group of good old boys, especially the Republican good old boys from the Miami-Dade delegation. And I think you were very threatening. So this next cycle, so you get elected in 2018. 2020, who is this guy who got elected? I don't even know.
Fabrizio. He's an attorney from Miramar.
Tom Fabrizio, who apparently supports conversion therapy and is, anti-abortion. So he'd like to take away women's rights. How does a guy like this get elected? How did this happen? So what happened this cycle?
Everyone keeps asking what happened this cycle, but essentially the same reason that I got elected in 2018 is the same reason, if you think about it, that I lost in 2020. And what I mean by that is the reason we felt it was going to be an uphill battle in 2018 and we were going in with the attitude of having to fight is because the New York Times and the Washington Post can write all these articles about misinformation in Miami-Dade County like we're supposed to be shocked. See, I've lived here my entire life, and especially growing up in Hialeah, I have grown up around folks who have fallen for that misinformation year after year, as a matter of fact, decades. And that is what my group and I were trying to fight in 2018, right? It was a perfect storm. I didn't win just because I was some phenomenal candidate. There was a bunch of factors, and losing is the same exact thing. There's a bunch of factors. They dumped a crazy amount of money. They wanted that seat back. There was a presidential election. We saw what happened in Miami-Dade County, and my section, it was we were supposed to be shocked about winning in 2018. So what they did in 2020 was just basically what they had done in every other election cycle, was to talk about things that have nothing to do with what happens in Tallahassee. They want to talk about Cuba, Venezuela, socialism. They want to talk about all these, scary topics because they prey on people's true fears. But I've known that. And that is the reason why I've always been outspoken. And that is also the reason why I'm a huge sports fan. So I always throw in some sort of a sports analogy. But I left it on the field every single day because I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there. And so I cherished every single moment, and every moment that I grabbed that mic as what could potentially be my last moment. And I'm really proud that I did that. I never grabbed the mic with political calculations. I kind of suck at that. But I wanted to make sure that if it was only 2 years that I had, I was going to bring everyone's voice from back home with me into that chamber.
No, I think it was your authenticity that resonated so much, and different things that you and Anna Askamani share and post. You said something the other day on Twitter that I read. You said, this system isn't made for us. And you talked a little bit about the economic implications of getting elected to go to Tallahassee. And I feel the same way in our municipal elections, where our county commissioners make $6,000. Our commissioners on Miami Beach make $6,000. It makes no sense. It's just a big corruption soup. So explain why the system is not made for the regular working class individual.
You see, we live in a world right now where everything is sound bites, right? And if you're able to have a conversation like you and I are having, and you explain to folks how much a salary for an elected official is, and what that means and what decisions they then have to make with contractors and these side businesses that a lot of them have, that folks would totally understand. But there has been time and time again where the idea of raising people's salary has been on ballots, and our community votes against it. Why do we vote against it? Because we already are going into it thinking politicians are rich, they are a bunch of elite folks, which they have been traditionally. And so it is not a system that is designed for regular people. I have $50,000. That tweet was about unpaid internships. And I was explaining that I'm not a fan of broad statements of, hey, so if you can hire an intern, you can pay them. Okay, hold on a second. What you mean to say is, if you are able to hire an intern, if you have the budget, if you are legally allowed to pay an intern, you should pay an intern. You see, it's the same idea. We just need to be really specific because we tend to group folks in it. And so I was making $29,000 a year. I am not an attorney.
Legislator. Okay.
As a part-time legislator, by the way, because I'm sure everyone that's watching or everyone that's going to see this certainly wants your legislator to only answer the phone on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 to 2. See, it doesn't, so it's not realistic, right? In order for me to have a real job, I would have to have a job with an employer that would be totally fine with me being MIA for about 5 months, because you're traveling back and forth for half of that time, and then now 60 days in session. There's not many employers that do that. There are lobby firms, there are attorney firms that benefit from their employee being an elected official. So they're fine with you being gone for 5 months.
Charter schools.
6 figures. Our state senator is so amazing at being a part-time state senator that he gets 6 figures to run a charter academy and then gets named to be the head of every education committee. That is who we vote in, right? And so nobody's going to vote for Manny Diaz Jr. to make $79,000 a year, right? Because that would be ridiculous. And so what you don't realize is that by trying to keep him out of exploiting the system, you have kept folks like me that are on the receiving end of those policies, you have kept us out of it. And so it was a huge sacrifice, one that I am still paying for. But it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We have to be there in order to be able to change the policies. But how do we get regular people to run for office if we do not have infrastructure for them, if we do not prepare them? And Lord knows that once you get in, you are thrown to the wolves and you got to figure it out.
Listen, my first election, I won just because I stood on a bridge literally for maybe 100 days in the morning at 6 a.m. and in the evening because I did not have any money. I didn't have any political power. I was telling my students that I was going to interview you today. And I said, it's interesting. You make an assumption that people are either, very wealthy. Or I was sitting up there with people who were either very wealthy or lawyers who had a lot of political power, or they were from some storied political family, and then you had me. And I said that I used to use that in my favor. Even though at first I felt like I'm not supposed to be here, I was then able to say to people, I am supposed to be here because we do need community college professors and single mothers serving us. So I completely understand. And when you said that, you said something about the housing. You said that they give you a $6,000 stipend to be in Tallahassee during the legislative system, and the rent costs $4,500.
Yeah, because it's about, if you think about it, you're going to be renting for about 2 months, usually 3, because that last month right before session starts, you're up there for 3 weeks, 3 out of 4, right? So it's essentially you're having to figure out, yes, the state pays for your hotel, the state pays for your travel, but you have to stay within a budget. And what I learned the second time around was that it was better for me to use that money fully and not try to bring some home so that I could pay for my son's school, in order for me to be in a safe area where I would have peace and quiet, because that place kicks your butt. Which, by the way, I'm so proud I didn't curse.
Explain why. Why? Just because it's constant every day.
It's brutal. It's brutal. There's not a lot of, one, there's not a lot of women. 2, there's not a lot of women that look like me. There's not a lot of women that sound like me in there, right? We certainly know outside of those chambers, I'm not some sort of anomaly and I'm not a unicorn. But you were reminded, Leva placed me in the last seat in the last row right by the exit. And it was a constant reminder of, you used the word that they felt threatened. And I don't necessarily, they never treated me as though I threatened them. It was almost as though my existence offended them. It offended them that I cried on the house floor. It offended them that I would invoke my parents' name. It offended them that I would speak from my heart. And in the very last speech, which I didn't realize it would be my last speech as a representative, I spoke about sexual harassment. And it was supposed to be this very sort of silent moment that my team and I had planned on an amendment. And it really wasn't supposed to garner a lot of attention. And after 2 hours of being shamed by the Republican women, I ended up breaking my promise. I ended up crying on the floor during my second session. First session, I cried like legit every day I grabbed the mic. But this second session, I was like, I just got to keep it together. And I cried that last day. And the reason I cried was, one, it's a buildup of emotions. And one of the things I said, and recently this came up, which is why it's so fresh in my mind, because I heard that speech again, was that I was going to do exactly what I had been doing my entire life, which was to take things personally. And every time I grabbed that mic, Kristen, if I talked about unions and the rights of union members, I was talking about my dad. If I talked about women's rights, I was talking about myself. If I was talking about children, I was talking about my son. And so I've always taken things very personally. And for about 1.5 years, I was told by all the experts and everyone that's been in office, Paulo, you got to stop taking things so personally. And I realized I needed to lean in, because if your elected official is not taking your life, your housing, your environment personally, then I think it's time that you find a new elected official.
No, that's why it made me so upset that when I heard of this loss in 2020, probably fueled by the Donald Trump sweep of Miami-Dade County overall, because I thought, wow, Cindy Polo is someone who really, there's very few women who can speak Spanish fluently, have your experience, can communicate the way that you do. And I think that's really what caused a lot of fear among these legislators and made you a target. Are you running again? Can we please take this guy Fabrizio out? Tom Fabrizio, we're coming for you. We're coming for you.
So I don't know, and that's my honest to God answer. And there's two reasons. There's a political reason and there's a personal reason that I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Politically, if we thought those maps were bad, prior to this census and prior to this cycle, what we're about to have is going to probably have to be battled in the courts, because we lost so many seats and they have the majority in everything. And so, it's not that I don't find value or honor in losing. I just certainly now know the price I have had to pay, and more importantly, the price that my son has had to pay. And so I don't feel that I want to blindly get into something. We always have to be very smart about what we get into. I am not one of those, like, every seat we go all in, because it's just not realistic. We don't have their kind of money. We don't have their kind of manpower. We need to be smart about the things that we do. So that's politically. And personally, I think I am still sort of processing what the last 3 years were like, because I think everyone thinks that I have taken a hiatus because, oh my God, I've taken the loss so hard. It's not the loss. It was actually how painful the previous 2 years were. And I think I kept my face and my communication with the public sort of very high level of just how much it sucked policy-wise. Personally, it takes a toll, especially on folks that, my housing wasn't being paid by a lobbying firm, or my housing is not being paid, and all those things happen, right? And so there is a price to pay, and I'm still trying to find what is the most effective way I can help my community without throwing myself under the bus.
You gotta do it again. I know that there's that feeling where you say, okay, I'm gonna file those papers, and then I've got to start making those phone calls, raising the money. I'm a target again. Will I be investigated? Is my phone hacked? I mean, it's crazy.
Am I being followed? Listen, I got my car stolen from the front of my house twice in 11 months.
Wow.
And everyone said I'm crazy. And so I just kind of said, you know what? All right, fine. I just have a crap ton of bad luck. So much so that I think none of my friends want to park in my parking spot. They'll just go and park somewhere else.
No, but this stuff happens.
It does.
Stuff happens, and it's real. And that's why you have to, if you Google Abraham Lincoln and you look at his political career, he probably lost 2 or 3 races for every race that he won. He was constantly losing. And when I feel not necessarily fear, but maybe trepidation about considering running again for another office, I always go and I look at all of Abraham Lincoln's losses, and I say to myself, okay, I can do this.
That's a really good point. And there are so many seats, in my area specifically, that really need more sort of brave people. And this last cycle, that's one of the things that I feel was part of a win. Sometimes the win doesn't come in numbers, right? But we had so many extraordinarily brilliant, regular people on ballots, right? And from, in South and in the West, and people that, a few years ago would have also not been considered viable, right? And we're being judged either by the consultant machine or being judged based on the money in a bank account. And so I think that if you speak honestly with those folks and you don't feel betrayed as a candidate, then they'll be able to come back. And so my hope is that, if not for myself, that I can help elevate whoever else wants to do this, because it sucks. I've had a few phone calls from people that are considering running for a bunch of things, and they kind of want to know how, what advice I'm going to give them. And I go into a list of 99 reasons why you shouldn't. And
no, but you can't do that. You have to just encourage everybody. But I understand.
But the last reason is the most important. You want to run. Because I'm going to be able to give you all the reasons why you shouldn't. But the one that is the most important is that if you feel like it is itching and it is there, you got to do it. Because even those 99 things that are going to come at you, you're going to survive them. But you have to do it, because even if you don't lose, even if the results don't come in on your side, there's other people that are watching. And that has been the most rewarding thing, is to have high schoolers from HML, my very proud alma mater, saying, I've never seen someone like you run for office. And now I
win. I mean, that's the big thing. So I'm pretty sure that you got labeled as a socialist, like every other Democrat did across. And I know that there's a lot of Colombians out there who are independents and who are Republicans, because I have knocked on thousands of doors myself, and I do know that there are a lot of very religious Colombian people who are conservative, and I'm sure that they crossed over the first time and voted for you and then got afraid the second time. Can't you how can we fix this narrative and explain to people what socialism really means? I mean, is that a possibility? You know,
it is. It's absolutely a possibility, but we have to also set realistic expectations, right? So these are my two biggest pet peeves of politics in general. It seems as though August before election day, our group and our side tends to wake up and go, oh my God, there's an election in November, right? It's as though you think that we're starting from square one and we're starting at zero. We have never been starting at zero. That radio show that now everyone's talking about and all this stuff on Spanish radio, that's happening on a regular April, not even on election year, right? That's been happening for a long period of time. And for us to not be aware of that, then it means that we go into neighborhoods thinking that we're going to knock on a door, and that 5-minute interaction, no matter how valuable it is, we are somehow going to wipe 35 years worth of this insane machine that has been saying the same thing over and over again, right? So that's one of my pet peeves. The second one is that we've been telling folks that this has been happening, right? Is that, you know, with Colombians specifically, is that Colombians, Venezuelans, you see it in all parts of Latin America. What we consider socialism may not necessarily translate to what's happening in Latin America, right? And so when you just translate, like literally, you just use the words, then you do spark fear, in a realistic fear. And what I mean by realistic is that it's based on—
they lived it, they've lost their properties, correct, they've had to leave everything behind and come here. So I understand that. And there's certain people, I will say that Congressman Salazar is abusing that term, and she knows very well what socialism means. And I know
she sat across from the guy. She sat across from the boogeyman and crossed her legs and smiled and flipped her hair in Cuba. And she just got booted as a congresswoman. I mean, they have been doing it. Listen, 2018, my first radio interview, and it was because of a friend of a friend. I think it was Actualidad Radio that I get called, and I take my parents. I'm such it was such this big moment. And so I take my parents, and they're having this interview. It's the first time they've ever met me. And they come back from commercial break, and the gentleman says, Cindy, what were you just saying off radio? And I said that I'm so aggravated by the commercial that you just played. You just played a commercial for State Senate Seat 36 for Manny Diaz Jr. And the entire commercial was about Venezuela. Do folks not realize that when he goes to Tallahassee, there is literally nothing he can do about Venezuela, but he's doing it to pander to folks? And I said, that is my aggravation. That is why I'm getting into politics. Because
it works. It works.
It works. We
have to hit back. We have to hit back and tell them what their votes are doing. And
oh no,
but maybe
there you go.
You have, you can't go out in Biscayne Bay right now. Maybe that could be the agriculture and big sugar industry that's telling everybody that it's septic tanks, but it's really their fertilizers. That's why you can't swim in the bay. And I guarantee you, one thing that Hispanic people love more than anything is the beach and the water. And I feel like we don't really use those themes to kind of to grab the voters and educate them about what's happening.
I think and it comes down to money, right? Our strength, which is our diversity and the fact that we don't fall in line as the other side does, can also be to our own detriment. We're struggling to pay our rent, and we're worried so we're not getting money, right? So the big money is not going to come from unions, which granted, they always show up for candidates like me, but $1,000 here and $1,000 there, yeah, it helps you with a grassroots campaign, but it's not the same when you're getting $50,000 into your PAC from FP&L, right? And so we are always up against money. We are always up against this infrastructure that they have built. And, recently someone tweeted at me about Mario Diaz-Balart, and that we should contest that seat and we can't just let seats go by. And I was like, I sort of agree with you, except who is it that you're going to be throwing in against them, right? Because it's the candidate that's going to be on the phone, that's going to be begging, that's going to be dragged through the mud. The first time around, I was just a mom, which I loved. I think my opponent said that in an interview. And it was phenomenal, right? Because they didn't know what they were up against. In 2020, I was everything but just a mom. I was a socialist, I was a radical, I was foul-mouthed, some of those may be true. And I was a troublemaker. Nobody liked me and I couldn't get along with anybody. And the current representative has legislation that hasn't been heard in committee. So apparently he's not nice enough. But that is what you are constantly up against. And women, I mean, that's a whole nother show.
Okay. Well, no, I was reading that one of the arguments that they used against you is that you were unable to pass certain legislation except for Colombian American Heritage Day, which, by the way, could be a great educational tool. So congratulations on passing something. But explain to people, in Tallahassee, if you're a Democrat in the minority and you don't want a horse trade, you're not getting anything done. I mean, I'm surprised that reps like Michael Grieco, he really goes in and finds issues that people can get behind, but that's not so easy to do. And he has a lot of experience doing this.
Yeah.
And that takes years to do too. And now we're term limited. So by the time that somebody gets there and really can even navigate their way around Tallahassee, if they don't have prior legal experience, it's very difficult to make any changes.
Listen, I'm really good friends with Grieco, and you're right. He and I had completely different styles. There was this one bill that he was very concerned with, especially with homeowners in his area, and it had to do with like sprinklers and high rises and stuff like that.
And condos, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a controversial, like that's not going to end up on the front page of the Herald, right? And so there is room for him to be able to sort of work. And Grieco is much more moderate than I am in a lot of issues. And so, yeah, he's able to play that game. I didn't come into politics, no offense to him or to all the people that are very effective at it. I didn't come in to play games, right? There is not many Griecos walking around Miami-Dade County feeling like they're left out of government. There are a lot of Cindy Poland that feel like they're left out of government, right? Which means that we serve two different purposes. So yes, he may be able to come back and talk about the sprinklers and talk about some water projects. I, a very educated voter, have never voted for a representative, a senator, a governor because of a water project or some appropriations. Most folks don't even know what appropriations are, right? I have voted for folks that are not afraid to fight the good fight, even if you know that the vote's not going to go your way. And so, yes, you have folks like that. In my case, when the speaker, I was the only representative that the speaker would not meet with, right? And it wasn't.
He wouldn't even meet with you. Jose Oliva would not meet with you.
Yes, I was denied 3 times. I was invited in the Monday after I called him out on the House floor about refusing to listen to the firefighter cancer coverage bill. That was the day that he called me into his office finally. So this is my point. My point is they made it very clear to me from day one that there was going to be no appropriations. There was going to be no bill that was ever going to be heard. And by the way, that is 80% of the Democratic caucus, right? So it wasn't like I was somehow some anomaly. And so if somebody tells you that, then you have one of two choices. Sit in the back and put your head down, right? And believe what they're going to say, or you find a different way to be successful. And in my opinion, my success came that I never picked a fight that didn't matter, but I certainly was going to call them out on all of their BS. And if they said something, I didn't play by their rules of that you don't call somebody out on the floor. No, see, because every time that you call them illegals, you're talking about my family. So I'm going to come at you like you're talking about my family. And so I I played by the same rules that
I get it. It's personal. It's personal, and you represent a changing demographic in the state of Florida, and I think you really do frighten them. It scares them. That's why they put you all the way in the back of the legislature, in the corner. It's why they targeted you. You're a yogi, so you are in tune with yourself, and I'm sure you've reflected on everything that's happened. If you could do anything different the past 2 years, so that the outcome would have been different here. I mean, because you're gonna be targeted no matter where you run or how you run. Trust me, I ran in 2019 in Miami Beach, and I don't know how much money was spent, but Cindy, it was like the worst possible attack that you could possibly imagine. So it does deter somebody from wanting to run. So would you do anything different?
No.
No?
No.
So that's why you have such a big following.
Yeah, I feel like I lost being myself. I won being myself. I owe no favors to no one. The voters got me in. It wasn't big money that got me in. It was my friends. Those are the people that I answer to. And to say that I would change any of that would destroy all of it. I think I probably would have sought therapy a little bit sooner. But that's about it. I mean, I think that, being a yogi and being super mindful is recognizing that everything serves its purpose, right? And I'm not sure exactly right now. And I also am not impatient enough to know what the purpose was. But that week after the election, I sort of turned everything off and spent a lot of time at CJ. And, and I have been very open to cry in front of my son. And in one of those sort of moments of crying, CJ said, "Okay, Mama, I know you're sad, but now we just have to find new people to help." So my 5-year-old understood that's what I was doing, was helping people. And that makes everything worth it, right? Is that I'm responsible for this child who one day needs to care about people, even if it doesn't relate to him. And so to change one thing or the other means I would not be where I am today. It means that I would not have the friends that I have. It would mean that even the scars that a lot of people still have yet to see because I have yet to share, they all serve a purpose. And so, no, I wouldn't do anything different.
Well, I'm hoping that I wanted you to come on here so that I could, number one, encourage you to run for office again. I don't know what municipality you live in, but they probably need your voice, because that's really where the highest level of corruption and taking of taxpayer resources happens, is at the municipal level. So I'm sure that you should just go to that Hialeah Council all the time.
Yeah. So my district, so District 103, which is still my district because I am a resident. I've always said I was going to probably be a resident of 103 far longer than a representative. But I live in the Broward section. I've lived in Broward for 2 years now, in Miramar. And Kristen, that example of, at the municipal level, there are 2 young women, Val Glenister and Carrie Ann, who are running for the commission, right? First-time candidates, young women of color, that they are exactly what the point of this is, right? Is to bring new voices, to bring educated voices, because they are both highly successful, but they have gone into it because we have built on each other. They did not get into politics because of me, but it's collectively when you see more folks like you taking that chance, then you realize that change can happen. On the Dade side, we have Renee Garcia. It's a hamster wheel, right? Like, so everyone just sort of moves from one position to another. You're a state rep, then you became a state senator. Then
it's interesting what you keep saying. Like, the people like me don't get elected. People in elected office don't look like me. I mean, it's just such a different perspective. It just made me even think about it. And I felt, uncomfortable sometimes as an elected official. And that's just because I was a woman, but I'm not a minority. And I can't even imagine what it's like to be, a minority woman on top
It's empowering, right? So there's a part of it that's very empowering. Right now, so we are in the middle of Seuss Week. My son was under the weather yesterday, and so this is the best. I even put lipstick on for you, Kristen. But this is the best you're gonna get right now. Right? There's a bunch of other things going on.
It's a pandemic.
Yeah, I know. But when I say that we don't belong, right, that is no longer something that I believe. I do believe that a lot of folks in those front rows think that we don't belong, which is why, and the reason I said the thing about my hair back is that that's how I normally look. I'm super tomboyish and I have a lot of hair, and so it's like a whole day process. But every day I walked into that chamber, I walked in with bright colors. I walked in with my hair down. I walked in with big earrings, bright lipstick, high heels, and there was a reason. The reason is that is what the women in my community have always looked like and have always carried themselves like. And when you have those doors open by the Sergeant of Arms, which is, for me, very humbling, you could see the difference between some of the folks that I serve with, that when those doors were opened for them, there was a sense of entitlement on their face. Mine was so humbling to have, in most cases, I think with the exception of one sergeant, they were all white men opening that door for me. Every time they opened that door, I imagined my mom, who worked in factories and wasn't able to take days off and was being paid under the table. I imagined my dad for 20 some years waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning so he could get to work for his 2 a.m. shift. I walked in thinking about my grandparents, who I never got to meet because we were never able to travel back to Columbia when they passed. And so when you walk in there with that on your shoulders and that propelling you to speak for them, you are reminded that they may think I don't deserve to be here, but I got here the same way you did, probably have had to work 5 times as hard. And you may sit me in the back, but you will absolutely see me in my bright colors, and you will absolutely hear me every time I pick up that mic. And that is what I am hoping we get more of.
Good for you. I hope, like, and I've said it a bunch of times, thank you for agreeing to do this show today. It is not easy after elections like the cycle that just happened to come forward and speak out, but it is the moment, and hopefully you'll get, I don't know if you're on your yoga mat yet, but you've got to
get back on.
After every loss, the day after I'd be at the yoga studio and I'd be like, I lost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it took a bit, but I'm making my way through, and I would be remiss to not thank the people that have quietly, outside of interviews and posts, have supported me. Some have been going crazy in the comments. Francesca Sesti Brown, Javier Esteves, Ricky Junquera, who also ran, like the 3 of them ran honorable campaigns. We had Maureen Porras, like we had a lot of new names and new voices. And that is what I am hoping we can continue to do. I will be there in one way or another, but I will be there, because once you know how bad it is, you can't turn away from it. And as I said in 2008,
we need change in the state of Florida, just like Georgia. I was listening this morning on NPR how they're going to pass this horrible law now where you can't vote in Georgia on Saturdays or Sundays to suppress the vote. And people do not realize that here in Florida, in Tallahassee, we have a Republican governor, a state legislature that's the House of Representatives. What is it? 65% Republican, 35% Democrat. And then what is the Senate? It's almost on par at the Senate.
No, now they went up, right? So we would have been on par had we won, had Javier and JJR retained. So now we're more behind. So I think we're down 4 seats. I'm sure Javier Esteves can type in the right number because he knows those things memorized. But yeah, it's really bad. And then the worst part is we have a governor. Like, we have folks that are like legit trying to figure out where to get tested, where to get a vaccine, how they're going to pay their rent, like real life stuff. But China, ladies and gentlemen, governor is super focused on China and big tech, because if Facebook doesn't let your name be spelled right, or you're not getting enough likes. There's the cancel culture, right? Like all things that have nothing to do with our everyday life.
Because it's the switcheroo, and it's very hard for most of they really have nothing to offer voters except for those emotional style issues, and that's why they don't really focus on our lack of spending on education, the privatized prisons, privatized Department of Children and Family Services. I mean, horrible stuff. So I really hope that you'll run again, Cindy. And thanks for coming on the show. Is there anything you'd like to end with? Is there anything you'd like to say that I can clip and spread?
I mean, thank you to you guys for continuing the conversation, right? For anyone who has followed me and has supported me, whether financially, emotionally, prayed for me, and I probably don't even know. I want to thank you guys because it was brutal. It was really, really bad, but it's absolutely necessary, and we just need more people to run. But just mathematically, we need more people to support those folks that run. And once they get there, protect them and protect our women. It's really, really bad. And that authenticity that you talked about and that so many people sort of applaud me for, I really do appreciate that because there is a sense of validation. However, the more authentic you are, the more painful this process is. And so just recognize that there's a lot of people that are trying to do good in a failed system. So we don't always get it right. But we really just have to keep going, take a breath, take a nap, drink a glass of wine, but then come back at it. Because that little man right there in that picture is depending not just on me, but on all of us to collectively get our shit together.
Because I'm sure that in 2022, you're going to have a lot of hard work to do. All right. So hopefully, maybe even state Senate. Just run for the Senate. Okay.
I'm telling you, there's a bunch of men on there that I would love to take out. But if it's not me, I will certainly help whomever is crazy enough to try to do it.
Well, count on me, and I will definitely be at your first fundraiser, whatever you decide to run for. So thanks, Cindy. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.